It's time to hear the truth about America's biggest challenges. You're listening to America Off the Rails with your host, Rick Robinson.
Listen, folks, I'm here to tell you our political system is broken. The two-party system is dead. They have become one and the same.
Keep on doing what you do, Rick. You're my favorite host. Favorite host.
This is always the killer, the one that just destroys that never Trump argument. Hillary Clinton will fill the Supreme Court with liberals. She'll also appoint federal judges with a liberal bent to them.
I don't feel no ways tired. I come too far from where I started from. Don't let anybody tell you that it's corporations and businesses that create jobs.
Arrogant, sanctimonious, self-righteous, sabotaging Trump.
Everybody's got to be covered. This is an un-Republican thing for me to say, because a lot of times they say, no, the lower 25% they can't afford. I am going to take care of everybody. I don't care if it costs me votes or not. Everybody's going to be taken care of much better than they're taken care of now. The government's going to pay for it, but we're going to save so much money on the other side.
ISIS is honoring President Obama. He is the founder of ISIS. He's the founder of ISIS. Written by a nice reporter. Now the poor guy, you got to see this guy. Oh, I don't know what I said. I don't remember. He's going like, I don't remember. Maybe that's what I said.
What realized is that the Bill Kristols of the world, the never Trump people, they were just never serious. They never had any kind of ground game. They never had an actual candidate they could pick.
And in a surprising and disturbing move today, the Libertarian vice presidential candidate just agreed that rifles are weapons of mass destruction and people on the terror watch list should not be allowed to purchase guns. So in other words, the party of freedom is liberty for me but not for thee. Go figure.
Compromise where you can. Where you can't, don't. Even if everyone is telling you that something wrong is something right. Even if the whole world is telling you to move. It is your duty to plant yourself like a tree.
Hello, America. Welcome to America Off the Rails. I'm your host, Rick Robinson. We've got a big show today. I want to thank everybody for joining us today, right here on our home station, KLNRradio.com. When we kick things off here in just a minute, we're going to have a very special guest with us. The editor-in-chief of the New Americana is actually going to be with us. I'll let her introduce herself in a moment. We're going to be talking a lot of things that are going on behind the scenes there, as well as some predictions and possible mayhem for now that we are about, 4 or 5 days away from the election. I'm losing count at this point because I've been dealing with this for 18 months. At this point, I'm just ready for it to be over. But all that and more coming up right now on America Off the Rails. Don't go away.
It's time to hear the truth about America's biggest challenges. You're listening to America Off the Rails with your host, Rick Robinson.
Listen, folks, I'm here to tell you our political system is broken. The two-party system is dead. They have become one and the same.
Keep on doing what you do, Rick. You're my favorite host. Favorite host.
This is always the killer, the one that just destroys that never Trump argument. Hillary Clinton will fill the Supreme Court with liberals. She'll also appoint federal judges with a liberal bent to them.
I don't feel no ways tired. I come too far from where I started from. Don't let anybody tell you that it's corporations and businesses that create jobs.
Arrogant, sanctimonious, self-righteous, sabotaging Trump.
Everybody's got to be covered. This is an un-Republican thing for me to say, because a lot of times they say, no, the lower 25% they can't afford. I am going to take care of everybody. I don't care if it costs me votes or not. Everybody's going to be taken care of much better than they're taken care of now. The government's going to pay for it, but we're going to save so much money on the other side.
ISIS is honoring President Obama. He is the founder of ISIS. He's the founder of ISIS. Written by a nice reporter. Now the poor guy, you got to see this guy. Oh, I don't know what I said. I don't remember. He's going like, I don't remember. Maybe that's what I said.
What realized is that the Bill Kristols of the world, the never Trump people, they were just never serious. They never had any kind of ground game. They never had an actual candidate they could pick.
And in a surprising and disturbing move today, the Libertarian vice presidential candidate just agreed that rifles are weapons of mass destruction and people on the terror watch list should not be allowed to purchase guns. So in other words, the party of freedom is liberty for me, but not for thee. Go figure.
Compromise where you can. Where you can't, don't. Even if everyone is telling you that something wrong is something right. Even if the whole world is telling you to move. It is your duty to plant yourself like a tree.
All right, folks, and this again is America Off the Rails. I'm your host, Rick Robinson, and that's right, we are now what? Let's see, today is Thursday, or at the time the show airs, it will be Thursday, so that puts us to Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, 5 days away from either nightmare person from becoming president. Now, discussing this with me today is a very special guest. I'm going to let her introduce herself because we have not spoken much in person, and I keep forgetting to ask her how to pronounce her first name. So I do have the chief editor of the Americana with me today. Hello, ma'am. How are you?
I'm great. Sunny. It's Sunny Leinert. I'm the managing editor of the newamericana.com. And I don't blame you because it's spelled wrong. So my whole life I was called Suni by all of my teachers for the first several weeks of school. So no worries there.
See, I have one of those. See, for those of you who don't know, I do the show under a stage name. I don't hide that. I actually thought about changing it to my real name when it really started taking off about 3 years ago, because by then I really didn't have to hide it anymore because the people that I worked with already knew that I did it because half of them listened and didn't tell me. So, but anyway, because of where I work, it actually started under a stage name. I have one of those last names, which is when I saw your first name was spelled differently, and I forgot to ask. I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to let her introduce herself because I would have pronounced it exactly the way you were just complaining about being called that in school. So I wanted to avoid that situation. So I'm glad I didn't try.
Works
right.
For me.
So anyway, so we have been talking a little bit before the show about some of the stuff that's going on with you. Why don't we go ahead and start there? At this point, like I told you before we started the show, when I have a guest on, because I don't have them on all the time, I make the show as much about that guest as possible. So you are welcome to start off in any direction you wish, whether it's talking election, whether it's talking about your new role at the New Americana, whatever you want to talk about. So the floor is yours.
Fantastic. So I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. I am an older millennial, and I was in the IT executive sales sector for about 10 years. And due to some family circumstances and things, I had to actually get out of that line of work because, I was traveling, 5 days a week, working 65 hours a week. I have 2 children. I'm married. And it was a big problem. And I got really involved in politics. I've always loved politics. I went to school for journalism. I was the editor-in-chief on my school newspaper. And then I worked for some local newspapers as a copy editor and a correspondent. And I got involved in politics during the Iowa primary. And it just basically consumed me because I stopped working so much. And I looked around at this country and I was just appalled at what I was seeing. And I felt like, people don't even know, there's an enormous segment of the population walking around out there that have no idea, the dire situation this country is in. And so, I've been active on Twitter a lot. I got a writing job at The Resurgent. And, just recently I was, hired on as the, managing editor of the newamericana.com. And the reason why the founder of the newamericana.com, J.D. Rucker, brought me on is because he is actually busy trying to create a new party. And so it's a really exciting time. I hope everybody visits the site and follows along. But we're at an apex here. And unfortunately for everyone in the world, the 2 candidates that are gonna win, in 5 days are just god awful. But, there's light at the end of the tunnel, I guess. And, let's just hope that, we can, make it down that tunnel to get to where
Sunny, I don't know if you can still hear me, but you cut out. Are you there?
Yes, I'm sorry. It must have been something. I'm not sure.
No, it's all right. We just lost you for about 15 seconds. It was just kind of odd because you were there 1 second and gone the next. I was afraid because I'm in the middle of a thunderstorm. I thought maybe something had started messing with my internet again, but it seems like it's holding up okay. So I was just kind of worried. No worries. Okay, so it's interesting that you mentioned the new party. We'll get to that in a second. I have kind of a bit of a conundrum I find myself in, though, only because two things have occurred to me this election cycle. In this election cycle, I see a real-life version of the Kobayashi Maru. For those of you who don't know what that is, that was the no-win scenario that was talked about in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. Because no matter who wins, I feel like America loses, and I felt that way for a while when we realized we were going to come down to basically these two main choices. Also, an interesting parallel and only about a year off, if the score doesn't change, the Cubs will win the World Series. In Back to the Future 2, they won it in 2015. They'll apparently be winning it this year in 2016 if something doesn't change. And if Trump wins, we will officially have the real-life version of Biff as president. So, very interesting movie parallels going on right in front of us, quite possibly. I'm just
that just means Smod's close.
Well, okay.
the asteroid's gotten closer.
Can I just say that at this point I'm actually praying for SMOD? I mean,
yeah.
At this point I would settle for SMOD 2017 because it doesn't look like it's happening in 2016. But January 1st, I'm all about it. I'm just saying.
Right.
But yeah. So anyway, and I feel exactly what because you were talking about. You started getting involved during the primary and it consumed you. I've been doing this now for about 7 years, and it's just something that I've not ever been able to put down. It started as a Facebook page because I honestly really felt like nobody was listening anymore. They were just, and it's even worse now, they were just shouting across tables. So I thought if I could find some sort of a forum, and then I started realizing that other people had already done that and been doing it for much longer than me. But one of them actually took off fairly well, so it actually turned into the network that I run now and eventually became a station called K98 Talk that I am now no longer affiliated with. And then a new business partner joined me and we launched KLRN here about 6-7 months ago. And since then things have just taken off like gangbusters. But it's all been kind of the same thing. It all started for the same reason. Nobody listens to anyone anymore unless their views perfectly align. We find ourselves in a time that I didn't think I was ever going to see. Unless you align, and this is happening across party lines, unless someone agrees with at least 99.9% of what you say, most people don't want to hear it anymore. And when you try to call it down the middle, like I've done for most of this election cycle and tried to point out the reasons why they're both horrid, I spend all day, every day on social media defending my position of not being willing to vote for either one. I'm being told I'm an idiot because I'm supporting Hillary. I'm being told I'm a traitor because since I'm not voting for Trump, and vice versa. And I didn't realize how far gone we were. And what really kind of set me off and made me realize just how bad things are, when I first started doing this and it really started taking off, I ended my show the same way every single time. And I've actually stopped it since an exchange that I had. But I used to end the show every night and every day by saying it's time to put down the remote, get off the couch, and find a way to get involved. I had 4 or 5 different completely engulfed Trump people quote my lines back to me and say that I'm the reason why they're now voting for Trump. That was when I actually seriously thought about shutting everything down. I'm not even going to lie.
Well, I don't think you can blame it on yourself. I think that we rail against Trump and we rail against Trump's supporters for good, the sycophants for good reason, but Trump would have never gotten this far and nobody would have paid attention to him had the GOP lived up to their campaign promises, even half, or had not lurched so far left into their own progressive party that, everybody that's sitting around, just saying, what are you doing? What is happening? And I just think Trump is a symptom of that. And, it's unfortunate, and SMOD might come and save us all from, the impending doom. But, if he doesn't, or she, I guess, I don't know, it's a meteor, right? But, we have to figure out how to get ourselves out of this. And unfortunately, we're all realizing it now, I think, that, we're in really bad shape. Biff or, the most corrupt person that ever, ran for the presidency is, either going to be our president. But, this started a long time ago. This started, in my opinion, long, long ago, but, most recently, right, when Reagan handed the reins over to, Bush Sr. So, we just, became the party of war and, the military complex and nose donors and the Democrats, the party of big government, but we're the party of big government as well because it takes a whole lot of government to fight wars all over the place. And, so, it's just an unfortunate situation, but something like this had to happen, for our country to survive, and let's just hope it does.
You bring up a lot of interesting points and this is one of the things, or one of the reasons why I think the Libertarian Party really blew it this year, because they actually had people paying attention to them in looking at them seriously for pretty much the first time in my lifetime. Unless you were already libertarian leaning, you really never seriously looked at that party. But the thing that disturbs me is they knew that for once they had spotlights on them, because I've actually interviewed the national chair of the Libertarian Party, Nicholas Sarwark, on more than one occasion. And he was actually talking about, once it got down to the point where they knew it was going to be Hillary and Trump, he had news organizations that had never called him before, calling him to get comments. But the thing that I feel like they missed was they decided that they were going to have all of the disenfranchised conservatives come to them on their terms, not willing to meet the conservatives even halfway with a candidate like Peterson. Because if Peterson was their nominee, I think this would be a completely different scenario than it is right now.
Absolutely. Or Rand Paul.
Yeah, I can't say that for 100% certainty, but seeing all the people that were willing to rally behind Peterson, because he really was the epitome of a lot of libertarian-leaning values, but had enough conservatism thrown in that people were comfortable, instead of winding up with Johnson, who basically, his whole idea for the Libertarian Party is let's all eat brownies. And I'm talking about the ones from California. Or not California, but Colorado, sorry. See, maybe I had one before the show, who knows. But anyway, so, and it was disappointing to me, because he actually told me that during an interview, that the libertarians were too afraid that with as disenfranchised as a lot of conservatives were, that they were going to come in and reshape the party in their own image, so they wanted them to come to the Libertarian Party on their own terms. Now, I actually changed my registration for the first time since I first could register to vote, all the way back in 1992. Yes, I know I'm old. Nobody has to remind me. But anyway, so I had been a registered Republican from that day, because I had grown up and paid really close attention to politics even all the way back then. You can ask my high school teachers, because I was a nerd even back then. By the end of my high school career, I had 28 social science credits. You only needed like 6 to graduate. But every single elective I could find a way to take a government class or a civics class, I was there, because it's always what I wanted to do. And I never really could find a way to do it until the internet afforded me the opportunity. So I put it to use as soon as I realized there was an availability. But the thing about all of this is, with all of the people that were paying attention to the Libertarian Party, they had a chance to actually put themselves in a position to be able to actually have the White House for the first time since the existence of their party, and they missed it, all because they wanted to do the same thing as the other two parties. They didn't want to change or shape anything to bring people to the table that didn't involve them doing anything that would change the dynamics of their party. So I don't understand that, especially when all the libertarians that I know here locally kept telling me that for the most part, most of their philosophies are more conservative, at least when it comes to the fiscal stuff. But they're more socially liberal. I know a lot of people that right now consider themselves conservative that are willing to put a lot of the social issues off the table just to make sure that we can save the economy. And they still weren't willing to put somebody like Peterson up to bring those people to the table. And I don't understand that, because what kept being shoved to me in front of me over and over again was, we're not willing to compromise at all in our beliefs, not even 1 percentage point, And if you're going to come to us, you're going to do it on our terms, because we do not want conservatives to reshape the Libertarian Party, even though if we really get stopped and thought about it, again, it's the same thing I've said before. There are about 7 hot button issues that if we could put those aside and realize those cannot be solved in a single election cycle and focus on the things that we can fix, this world would be a much better place. But nobody can seem to do that.
Yeah, and you know what's really crazy is they say that they didn't want to bow to conservatives and have them change the party, so they elected 2 men that aren't libertarians. I mean, Gary Johnson is probably, if he is a libertarian and understands the fundamental values of libertarianism, he's the worst messenger, like, in history for any type of branding or explanation of what he believes in. Maybe, I mean, it's tragic. Bill Weld is just a liberal Republican. He's the one out there, champion for, he'll do anything to hold up Hillary Clinton over Donald Trump. And, that should say something to libertarians about, his form of government. I have to admit, I am an enormous AP fan. In fact, before this cycle, before Ted Cruz came around, probably, if I had to pick which party probably, just by their Wikipedia pages, best described me, it would have been the Libertarian Party. And it's not because I believe in everything that they do socially, but I've learned by watching everything is that you can't mandate social issues on anybody anyway. The best thing you can hope for, in my opinion, is to be left alone and be able to believe what you believe and worship who you worship, and have your own principles not attacked and, punished for them, and fight the social issues in the culture. That's where it's really coming down to. And there's a, glimmer of hope here. They say that my generation, the conservatives in my generation are more conservative than, prior generations. And I think it's because, obviously for a lot of different reasons, but, AP was probably a little bit too young in most years, but he's absolutely a great messenger. I think he really actually believes, he was a producer for Judge Andrew Napolitano's show. And, so he knows the issues. And if he doesn't, he has somebody good he can call. But, Johnson and Weld, it was just a travesty. It was a travesty. And, they don't want conservatives changing the party, but then they let a guy, with a thong on wrapped in bubble wrap talk to all the reporters at their convention. It's like, if they ever wanted to become a national party and ever win national office, especially the presidency, that's not serious. It's not serious. And so, we were talking about the formation of a new party at the beginning of this, and I probably wouldn't have suggested that before this cycle and seeing how the libertarians, how this unfolded, I guess. And it's not the libertarian voters, obviously. It's, the libertarian infrastructure and, the delegates that, hold the nominating convention. But, it's just really sad. I don't know if there's ever been such an epic failure, to not progress and, really rise to the occasion is what I saw, by them, turning away AP, all of his supporters, and, nominating 2 men that one, probably aren't actually libertarians. I heard Gary Johnson the other day say he wanted carbon taxes, and it's just, that's nonsense. That's enormous government, that's enormous government regulation and punishment to try to modify behavior that, unless you're going to pull in India, China, and the rest of the developing world, won't matter anyway. It's just a punishment for you. It's just control and power. So, it was very depressing. And, that's kind of what sold me on, all right, the Constitution Party. I listened to a interview with Darrell Castle the other day, and he's a no-nonsense guy. All of his policies sound great. Honestly, he's a lawyer. I don't get the impression that he's super outgoing and motivated to grow the party. You can vote for him in, I think, almost all 50 states, but some of them are write-ins. But, they haven't gotten, more than 1 million votes. Probably half that in their entire existence. The Libertarian Party obviously, isn't growing and is actually shrinking. Johnson's down to 4% now in the polls. And, we need a party that's serious and that's going to take on this and not just live in our own little world and not want, in our hypothetical world where, the government doesn't build roads, and all these things when, we have a real serious problem now that we need to fix. And it has nothing to do with the roads, although they're horrible.
Well, I think for me, and this again is kind of me coming late to the party because, look, I've invested 7 years of my life up until now trying to build up the Republican Party, trying to show everyone that we were not as the left portrayed us, and then in one fell swoop, Donald Trump came in portraying the SNL caricature of what a Republican candidate should be as far as they're concerned, and proved the entire world that I was wrong and that I was a liar. And then I had a glimmer of hope dangled in front of me by the Libertarian Party, so I put all of my resources into helping them. And at this point, I still will keep my word to them, even though it's basically a moot point, because I promised them that if they could get on the ballot here, I would vote for Johnson, if for no other reason than to try to make sure that they got to keep the 15% so that they could remain on the ballot in the future here, because we have some pretty arcane election laws here. But,
and it's a great protest vote, so yeah.
Well, the thing about it is I live in Oklahoma. Trump has all 7 of our electoral votes locked up. There's no way around it. So sure. I can't really help. I can't help him because I won't. I can't really hurt him because I can't. But I can try to make sure that Oklahoma has better choices for the future, and hope that at some point the Libertarian Party stops becoming the retarded cousin of the Republican and the Democrats, because that's exactly how they've presented themselves this year. Look, guys, take me seriously while I'm running around the living room with a lampshade on my head.
Exactly. Well, and I just like to say, you voting for, and I advocate actually with all the bad things I just said about Johnson. And Johnson, if you're listening to this, I'm sorry. Call me. We can get some messaging down. But, I'm actually going to vote for him as well. Or I'm not sure. I live in Illinois. I'm not sure if the Derek Castle is on the ballot. But I want my vote to be counted. I want it to go to a bucket, if you will, that it will be counted, and the GOP will say, oh my gosh, so many more million people went to that bucket or other buckets, and we need to win them back, right? So at least it's counted, and they know that, or both, either party knows that some Americans aren't taking this anymore. And I don't think you can do that with, writing in your own name or writing in other names, but at least Gary Johnson is a bucket, and they will count those votes. You know what I mean? So, and they'll understand trends, and they'll know how many of their voters went to him and how many went to or how many of Clinton's did. And the best thing that we can do is just try to say, hey, we're not going to put up with your crap. We're not going to vote for, like you said, the SNL character of a Republican. And the reason why he's like that is because that's all he understands of Republicanism. He doesn't understand Republicans. He's a New York liberal. He only saw Republicans on SNL in that, acting flamboyant type terrible way. So, as demonstrated by his punishment for women who get abortions, it's just, if the Republican Party made a tragic error this cycle, I think the Libertarian Party doubled down on that.
No, I completely agree. Now, I also want to bring up one thing, because you had mentioned the carbon tax thing. That was that was the second thing that I heard for the Libertarian parties that this year that it almost made me just.
Stay tuned. Things are going to get real interesting. You're listening to the Spark Radio Network.
We might have to,
hang on, what were you trying to say?
I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I was just saying, we might have to pause so I can go grab another beer.
Oh, sure. I can pause for a second. Go ahead.
We're half done, right? So
All right, folks, welcome back. Already into the second half of the show, and we still have my very special guest with me, the editor of the New Americana, Miss Sunny Leonard is still with me. And we have been discussing kind of all over the place today, been talking about the ideas a lot of folks are having about forming a new political party, because those of us with conservative leanings are feeling really homeless because we kind of, like nomads, we're running towards the libertarians who shut the door in our face. We're looking at the Democrats, even though they started waving flags and talking all patriotic during day 2 and 3 of their convention. We're kind of looking at them like they're crazy. And then we watch the Republicans roll out Democratic talking points in the RNC. And a lot of us at that point were like, you know what? I'm done. I'm over it. We're going to find a new home, even if we got to build it ourselves. So she's been talking a little bit about that. We've been talking about her role at the New Americana. And since we're down to about 20 minutes-ish at this point, I'm going to start trying to round down the show just a little bit. So I have a question, and this is for you specifically, outside of your roles and everything else that we've talked about. What are your predictions for November, not the 8th? I don't really care who you think's going to win, because either way we're kind of screwed. What about predictions for the 9th? What do you think's going to happen the day after? Is this going to be close enough that things are still going to be going crazier? Are we looking at kind of 2000-ish all over again, or is there going to be a clear enough winner that everybody just kind of goes back to normal business as much as possible?
I think there's going to be a clear winner. But the problem is I don't know who that's going to be. And I guess, is there going to be a clear winner for most people? Yes. Is there going to be a clear winner for the most, ardent Trump supporters? No. Or Hillary. Either way, you're going to have people screaming fouls. But speaking on the new party, as far as how that looks on the 9th, it's a very different story whether, Hillary Clinton wins or Trump wins. Because if Hillary Clinton wins, you could basically launch the new party and announce it on the 9th. But if Donald Trump wins, it's going to have to be delayed, and might even be impossible to do, in the very short term, because of just the way it'll look, about, basically pouting about Donald Trump when like I said before, Donald Trump's just a symptom, and I also want to say, I don't begrudge anybody who just said, all right, these are my choices. Hillary's awful. I'm voting for Trump. You know what I mean? The problem that I have are the people that carried Trump, the people online and the people on the media that, do the same thing that we all, raged against Obama and the Hillary, supporters for doing, and the Democrats, just lie, cheat, steal by hook or by crook to get, their man across the finish line. And, so, I just don't want people to think that if they're going to go to the ballot box on November 8th and vote for Trump, I'm against that. I'm not. But, a Trump victory and a Hillary victory will mean nothing different for the state of our country. But it will mean a whole lot different for how we move forward, as people that want smaller government, states' rights, reverting back to the Constitution. How we can proceed after the election.
Good points, one and all, and I agree with everything you've just said. I guess my biggest thing with the day after the election is I just don't see any way that we ever come back together again. As much as I really hate to sound pessimistic, with as divided as we are and with as much as we have allowed both parties to start pigeonholing us and putting in categories and saying that, you're not just an American, you're this kind of an American, or you're that kind of an American, or hey, maybe you're not even an American at all. Because, the whole thing with Ted Cruz was he's not really a natural born citizen because he wasn't born in our country, blah, 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 blah. Doesn't matter the fact that his mom was actually an American citizen, which by law makes him an American citizen, which was the same thing. And I'm not going to lie. Back in 2008, I almost got caught up in that whole big rhetoric about Obama not being eligible to be president until I actually started doing some research on my own and realized that there are about 5 or 6 different interpretations of that part of the Constitution. And the issue with that is that nobody can really agree on which one's the right one. So depending on the interpretation, you may or may not have a fight, but it's your job to prove it in court, and they never did that. So sure. my issue with all of that is with the hate and the vitriol that we see everywhere. How do we start coming together again as Americans when we've allowed our government to get us to the point where we can't even have civil discourse anymore without somebody. I mean, I cannot count the number of times, especially on social media. And in some ways, social media has helped me build this, and it's helped me make this into if nothing else, a part-time career, because I actually do see some money at it. It's not enough to do it full-time yet, but I'm working on it. So I can't really begrudge social media very much, because without it and without the internet, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing right now. But at the same time, it has afforded so many other people the ability to be complete. I have to be careful because of some places the show goes, but to be complete jackholes in the way that they treat people. To the point where I have actually been threatened to be put under the wall when Donald Trump builds it, thrown over the wall, hung from the wall as a traitor, put in a boxcar and shipped off to the ovens, and a bunch of other colorful things that I really can't say on a radio show. And that's just from one side of the argument. The same things happen with the really crazy Hillary folks. I mean, at this point, if you're like me and you're trying to call it down the center and trying to point out, neither one of these people is going to be good for the country, because no matter what, the only thing that's really going to change is the way they choose to spend us into oblivion, because both of them are big government spenders. You can argue until the cows come home about whether one of them is supposedly a little more conservative or more liberal than the other. I don't buy that, because they both have the same basic ideas. And I can't remember if I said this before the break or not. I don't think I did, but this is probably, or actually is, the first time in my lifetime that I've seen three major political parties all with the same talking point, and they all agree on it, and it's terrible. They're all okay with the no-fly list becoming the no-buy list, which I have a problem with, one, coming from the Libertarian Party, because the Party of Freedom is telling me that the Second and the Fourth Amendment no longer apply to a sect of our population. I have a problem with it from the Republicans because, again, same argument. The people that keep telling me that they're for the Constitution are fine with throwing it out the window because Donald Trump says it's okay. The Democrats don't really have much of an argument. They want to be dumb, let them be dumb. They're Democrats. They've been on that path for a while now. I'm not sure why the Republicans suddenly decided to join them.
Sure, and I have maybe an answer for you if Clinton wins. Okay, so if Clinton wins, the majority, I believe, will come together in opposing her, and that's at least a starting point. The vitriol will be done, and I don't mean the people that told you they were going to put you in an oven. Those people, can you go back to the rock they crawled out from, but the majority of Republicans, the personalities, the national personalities, media personalities, we will all have one common cause to oppose her. If he wins, and to be honest with you, I do believe Trump will probably be marginally better than Hillary Clinton for this country, but not enough to ever, back him or, support all the flaws that he has. But if he wins, I don't know, because there's so many people that are just, like you said, accepting, his, positions, on, maternity leave and paternity leave and, being paid by the government and, like you said, the no-fly list and the, basically doing away with your Fourth Amendment rights, which, you could say has already been done away with by the Patriot Act and subsequent government overreach into our personal lives. But, that's what I'm still trying to figure out. I'm trying to figure out, how do we come back together? And the answer is probably we don't. We have to look across the aisle to those people that were almost similar to the Trumpkins, on our side, that are going to come out and vote for him, that haven't voted for 20 years, but they came out for Bernie, and they're not crazy. They just, he was talking about, basically, I agree with all the problems Bernie Sanders pointed out. He's right about that. I just disagree with, strongly with every single one of his solutions for those problems. He's saying, government, corruption and greed is the problem, so let's grow it. It's insane. But, talk to those people who don't really understand. They just heard what Bernie was, saying was wrong. They never really understood his solutions and how they would, actually be, the opposite of a solution, if he were to implement them, unless everybody in the government, if you believe, Bernie's a completely benevolent character is like Bernie Sanders. And I'm sorry, he's ancient and, he ain't going to be there very long. So, I think maybe we find common cause with them. And like you and I were kind of talking earlier, I think that there's an enormous amount of people in this country that don't understand the encroaching tyranny that we're facing. They don't understand how every time they take something from the government takes twice that from them behind the scenes, twice that amount of liberty that whatever benefit they're getting. And I think right now might be the prime time to wake up a lot of those people that are just saying, yeah, I don't want people to die in the streets, so healthcare, and yeah, I don't want kids to starve, so food stamps. They don't really understand the pervasive dependency it's creating in the generational poverty. And to kind of get them with their ears open, with Obamacare. I mean, all those people are paying. I mean, not all those people are getting subsidies. Those people are seeing what the government can do now and what big government does. And, I guess I would say the common sense people involved in the Black Lives Matter movement, they don't like oppressive police states. Well, of course they don't. But the generational poverty that they've been, born into, when you're poor, crime is on the rise because people, steal and commit crime and sell drugs and violence, to make a living and to get more than just this tiny little amount that they have. And they don't understand that then the big government sends out the police to basically, take care of that problem and in all honesty, become a revenue stream from finding those people for jaywalking and stuff. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. And you kind of get into that with the cigarette taxes. They're always talking about institutional racism. Well, who gets hurt most by, cigarette taxes? It's the poor people, obviously. And so, and a lot of those poor people are, blacks in the inner city or minority communities. And so, I think that there's a way, that no matter the outcome of the election, but those ways look very different. Does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. And yeah, I mean, I agree. My biggest thing about all of it, though, is just I wanted to hear your take on it because I hear from so many people, and honestly, at some point, I even started believing it myself, that there may not be a way back from this one. But I think that, again, has to do with the fact that because I'm trying to not only build up a radio show that is starting to get a pretty steady following, building a radio station and also a network to go with it means I spend an inordinate amount of time on social media where, unfortunately, all of the keyboard warriors that are, shall we say, underaged and basement dwelling are usually hard at work when their parents don't know what they're doing, pretending they're a lot bigger and badder than they really are.
Right.
So, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, and a lot of this may just be that. Because, I mean, there's an entire undersegment of the population that likes to pretend that there's something more than what they are when they're on social media because they can be whatever they want to be. They make a profile and all of a sudden, instead of just being a 30-year-old guy who's still living in his mom's basement, he's James Bond. And he's all over social media talking about how, well, I'm going to come find you and I'm going to get you because you're not going to vote for Trump. So, I mean, I don't honestly know how much of that is usual social media BS. I do know that I have seen an inordinate amount of people that I know that have been, to use an online term, doxed, where information that is personal and private to them has been released to the public through social media, and I know several people that has happened to. And that's one of the things that has a lot of people concerned in this election cycle because it seems like it's happening more and more. And there are this inordinate number of angry people on both sides of this thing. And for good reason, because, I just talked about, the fact that all three major parties are fine with the no-fly list becoming the no-buy list. This is also the first time in history that we have both major political parties, in one way or another, tacitly or tertiary, tied to what I would consider terrorist groups at the maximum or hate groups in the minimum, those being alt-right and Black Lives Matter. And it just astounds me to see where we are, and that the fact that we have people that have the attention span of 149 characters or less are now basically the ones that are deciding who's going to be the next president. I don't know how I know how we got here, but at the same time, I like to say all the time that I don't understand how we got here. But I will say that one thing that has become abundantly clear is the biggest problem we've had for a long time is a central government overseeing a lot of our education, because we are seeing 2 generations worth of people being chewed up and spit out by that system, and now we're seeing the 3rd generation come to the point where they can actually be the ones that are making decisions, and most of them don't even understand how to make basic decisions because they don't teach critical thinking in school anymore. They haven't for quite some time. And we're seeing
absolutely.
Today.
And I think if election 2016 proves anything, any policy at all being successful or a failure, it proves that the public education system in America makes people, dumber, if you will. I mean, you go to school and you give your kids over to these people, and when they leave, they're just these little people, and they're completely impressionable, and it's a catastrophe. But getting back to your other point, I don't think we're going to be able to put the parties back together, and I mean that on both sides. All the stuff coming out about Hillary Clinton, I don't think a whole lot of the really honest Bernie people that, like I said, just don't want to see people die in the streets or kids go hungry. And are sick of, the same things we complain about, inflation making our money, less, valuable and being able to buy less at the grocery store and making less and healthcare costing more. I don't think those people are just going to accept. Again, I think for Americans together.
No, and I think you're right, and I don't think you're right. I know you're right, because shortly after the Democratic convention, and sadly I don't have his name pulled up in front of me, so I don't remember it, but I actually interviewed a Bernie supporter who was outside of the Democratic National Convention the entire time. He was one of the folks that was standing out there protesting for Bernie, because by then they knew that he was not going to get the nomination. And he was talking about much of the same things that you're talking about. There's an entire group of people that at this point, they're tired of both parties. And I think the issue is we have people that have more socialistic leanings that are tired of the two-party system, and we have people with more capitalistic leanings that are tired of our current two-party system. And unfortunately, because of differences in ideologies, never the twain shall meet for the most part. But the one thing that we can agree on, whether we have more socialistic leanings or capitalistic leanings, is that neither party has our best interests at heart. And he kept saying that over and over and over again. And it was the first time that I heard anyone that would be considered a leftist by any definition actually admit that the Democratic Party had screwed them over. And they knew that going into that convention. They knew that because of the superdelegates and everything else, that they had literally been hosed. And they knew it. And he was actually telling me something that I had to go back in and verify, because what they wound up doing, and then believe it or not, we're already almost out of time, so I'll let you have a chance to give out social media contacts, etc. But they actually wound up, what they did was, once Bernie had actually stood up on the stage and endorsed Hillary Clinton, most of his supporters left. A good portion of them were like, nope, screw it, I'm out. So they spent the rest of the DNC running white noise generators so the people couldn't hear the protesters. They actually ran a Craigslist ad that you can still go find digital copies of, where they were actually filling the empty seats at $50 a pop. So that campaign was doing the very thing that everybody was making fun of Donald Trump for doing in the very beginning of his campaign, and that was paying people to fill the seats. Now, I don't know.
Sure, and...
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, there is a way that we can come together, that the capitalists and the socialists can come together, and that's the beauty of it. If we take the power back to the states, the 10th Amendment, take the powers back to the local communities. California can have their socialist policies, and Texas, just like now, can have their capitalist policies, and they'll see what, people can move states a lot easier than they can move countries. And the more socialist-leaning people will gravitate to those states, and vice versa. And, it's a really easy sell to go to a Bernie supporter that says, I'm a socialist, and say, all right, socialist. Well, can you imagine what your community, what your neighborhood, what your community, what your town, what your county would look like if 75% of the money that you sent to the federal government stayed local, and you had that local control? Can you imagine how many people you would feed, or how many how high of a minimum wage you would have, how nice the streets would be, how amazing your medical care would be, and local hospitals and health systems. And that's easy. And then you can even go to say, and obviously if it doesn't work, it's a whole lot easier to change it and for the citizens to affect change at a local level than it is at the federal level. One size does not fit all. You have to know what fits your community. The people in Alaska's needs are going to be a whole lot different than the people in Mississippi's needs. And, so there is a way, and it's a broad picture. It's not, all the way, but, I always like to think of it, hey, we're on a bus. We're going from tyranny to liberty. You can get off whenever you like, but let's get on the same bus together and work until you get off or I get off. Because right now we're just fighting over, specifics of liberty while we're on a bus to tyranny. And so, there is a way, but I think we have to change the messaging, and I think we have to change the way of Americans think about, left and right, and think of it as, what can we come together on? And I've been encouraged. There's a lot of very liberal people that I've had conversations with where I'm amazed at how much they agree with me and I agree with them on it, and how much we can come together on. But you'll never know that by looking at CNN or Fox News. You have to go out and actually, start uncomfortable conversations with people to even find out, the good things that you can agree on, because like you said, social media is so brutal. The bad things are in clear view, light of day, but you have to go searching for the good things. But I think a lot of that actually exists. And I think that, people can get on board. If we could just get the, power back to the states, we can go on from there. But I mean, that would be a huge leap.
All right.
Oh,
sorry.
no.
No, it's all right.
Okay.
I was fighting the board for a minute there. It was trying to do some crazy things. Okay. So, I have a question, and then I will give you a chance to, give out your social media contacts if you wish. When are you running for office, and where can I donate?
If 2016, I never thought, that I could be a politician. I'm not an angel, and I'm not very good at, lying to people. And I, have no tolerance for, the handshaking and the niceties. But after 2016, who knows? Who knows? But, I do like to help out, and you can check out, thenewamericana.com, because I'm the editor there. We'll be controlling the content. We'll have updates on candidates, but, I really want to take this in the direction of, a new generation of leaders, a new generation at my generation, and those coming in and maybe a little bit older than me, or in their 40s and 50s as well. But we've been, ruled, I would say, by people that, have no idea how we feel or what we think and what problems we have. And so, it's time for a new era of conservatism and, a new party to, lead the way, in my opinion.
All right, folks. Well, you've been listening to my interview with Sonny Leonard, the editor of The New Americana, who's been hanging out with me for the entire show. Believe it or not, ma'am, we are out of time. So if you'd like, you are welcome to give out any social media contacts that you want to give on the way out the door.
Sure. So follow The New Americana at social news, and follow me on Twitter at SMLeinart. That's LEINART. And, I look forward to, engaging with you, and I hope you visit the site.
All right, folks, and this has been America Off the Rails. I'm your host, Rick Robinson. I'm getting out. Got to get ready to get back over here tonight live for the Jen and Rick Show. And, of course, I will be with you again tomorrow morning on Friday as we round out the week and round home towards November the 8th. Either the beginning or the end of the world as we know it, who knows. And, of course, don't forget to tune in live right here on November the 8th for blow-by-blow Election Day coverage with all of the hosts here on KLRN rotating in and out for the full gambit. We will be covering the election live and in progress. The tears, the weeping, the gnashing of teeth, the joy, whatever may happen, will all happen right here on KLNRradio.com. Again, I am Rick Robinson. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks for spending some of it with us, and I will talk to you when I talk to you. Take care, folks.